Hey guys, tonight we begin with the surprisingly ordinary yet utterly fascinating world of dolphins. Those graceful marine mammals who glide through our oceans with what looks like effortless wisdom. But the truth is, being a dolphin is far more mundane than you'd expect, filled with failed hunting attempts, awkward social encounters, and the sort of everyday struggles that make human problems seem refreshingly simple. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world now. Dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Learning to swim properly feels like trying to choreograph a dance with your entire body while someone plays the music underwater and occasionally changes the tempo just to mess with you. Your mother glides through the water with the sort of effortless grace that suggests she was born, knowing exactly which fin goes where and when, while you flail around like a broken propeller having an existential crisis. The other calves seem to have downloaded some sort of basic swimming software that came pre-installed with their fins. They move forward when they want to go forward, turn when they want to turn, and generally behave as if the laws of hydrodynamics were written specifically for their convenience. You, meanwhile, have invented several entirely new forms of aquatic locomotion, none of which involve moving in the direction you're actually trying to go. Your signature move becomes what could charitably be called the sideways spiral, a complex maneuver that combines forward momentum with rotational confusion, resulting in a swimming style that looks like you're trying to drill through the water rather than simply pass through it. The fish in your path scatter not out of fear, but out of what appears to be genuine bewilderment at your approach. Your mother watches these attempts with the patient expression of someone who has seen this particular brand of chaos before and knows it will eventually resolve itself into something resembling competence. She offers gentle corrections. Try using your tail for propulsion, not as a rudder for confusion. Perhaps attempt to swim with the current rather than against it, sideways, and somehow also upward simultaneously. The gulf between demonstration and execution becomes painfully clear during your first formal swimming lesson. Your mother performs a series of smooth, coordinated movements that propel her through the water like she's been doing this for decades, which, you realize, she has. When you attempt to replicate these movements, your body seems to interpret the instructions as flail wildly while moving in a direction that defies several basic principles of physics. Your first attempt at diving deeper than 3 feet results in what can only be described as an aquatic faceplant into a patch of seagrass that was minding its own business until you arrived like some sort of confused torpedo. The impact sends small fish scattering in all directions, their expressions suggesting they take personal offense at your technique. Even the seagrass seems judgmental, swaying in the current with what you interpret as disapproval. The small fish scattered their bright yellow tangs and striped sergeant majors pause in their feeding to stare at you with the sort of fascination usually reserved for natural disasters or particularly inept street performers. One sergeant major actually circles back for a second look, as if confirming that yes, you really did just crash into their neighborhood like that. You surface for air with seagrass draped across your rostrum like some sort of unfortunate aquatic hairpiece, which does nothing to improve your dignity or your mother's confidence in your swimming abilities. She sighs in that particularly maternal way that conveys both love and the quiet desperation of someone wondering if her offspring will ever figure out the basics of existing in their natural environment. The other mothers in the pod exchange glances that you're learning to interpret as supportive but concerned. Their own calves are practicing elegant turns and controlled descents while you're still working on the fundamental concept of swimming in a straight line without involving seagrass or confused fish. Your breakthrough moment comes when you finally manage to swim in a straight line for more than 10 feet without involving any innocent bystanders or stationary objects. The achievement feels monumental, though your mother's expression suggests this is roughly equivalent to learning to breathe, a basic life skill that should have been mastered weeks ago. Echolocation, it turns out, is like having a built-in GPS system designed by someone who thought traditional radar needed more personality and significantly less accuracy. The concept seems simple enough. Make clicking sounds, listen for the echoes, and somehow transform those returning sound waves into a detailed 3-dimensional map of your surroundings. In practice, it feels more like trying to navigate using a translator app that only works half the time, and has strong opinions about your destination choices. Your first attempts at echolocation sound like a rusty door hinge arguing with a squeaky toy while a broken metronome keeps time in the background. The clicks that emerge from your melon, that bulbous forehead structure that's supposed to focus your sonar like an acoustic spotlight, instead scatter sound in all directions like some sort of underwater audio fireworks display. Your mother's sonar sweeps are things of beauty, precise, controlled pulses that paint detailed pictures of the seafloor, nearby coral formations, and that promising school of mackerel hiding behind the Elkhorn Coral about 30 yards to the southeast. Her clicks return crisp, interpretable data about size, distance, texture, and probably the fish's emotional state and credit rating. Your attempts return what can generously be described as ocean-shaped noise, a vague acoustic impression that there's definitely water around you and possibly some other stuff. But good luck figuring out what or where. The returning echoes sound like someone recorded the ocean through a broken telephone and then played it back underwater while standing in a different ocean entirely. The fish you're attempting to locate with your sonar probably think you're having some sort of mechanical breakdown. Your clicking patterns are so irregular and confused that they likely mistake you for a dolphin experiencing technical difficulties, possibly in need of roadside assistance or at least a user manual. Practice involves a lot of clicking at stationary objects, starting with large, obvious targets like coral heads and rocky outcroppings that can't swim away while you figure out the basics. Even these patient, immobile subjects seem to present challenges. Your sonar readings of a simple brain coral formation suggest it might be a small submarine, a large fish, or possibly a coral formation, depending on which echo you choose to believe. The rocks you practice on don't seem particularly impressed by your efforts. They maintain the stoic silence of objects that have been echolocated by generations of learning dolphins and have developed the patience that comes with being inanimate targets for acoustic experimentation. Even the sea anemones appear to be judging your technique, their tentacles swaying with what you interpret as mild disapproval. Your mother attempts to break down the process into manageable steps. Focus the click through your melon. Listen for the returning echo. Interpret the sound pattern for distance and texture. When you try to follow these instructions, your brain seems to receive them as make random clicking noises and hope for the best, which explains the continued lack of progress. The breakthrough comes when you accidentally click at a school of small fish and actually manage to interpret the returning echo correctly. For one shining moment, your echolocation provides clear, accurate information about the fish's location, size, and movement pattern. Unfortunately, this moment of clarity is immediately followed by your excitement causing you to emit a series of celebratory clicks that sound like a dolphin having a mechanical seizure, causing the fish to scatter and your sonar reading to dissolve back into acoustic chaos. Your mother explains that echolocation is as much about listening as it is about clicking a concept that seems to elude you entirely. Your approach tends toward the click louder and more frequently until something makes sense, school of sonar operation, which is roughly equivalent to solving navigation problems by shouting at your GPS until it provides better directions. The other calves in your pod seem to pick up echolocation with the same casual ease they demonstrated with swimming, their clicks producing neat, organized sound patterns that return useful information about their environment. Your clicks continue to sound like acoustic abstract art, interesting, possibly meaningful to someone, but not particularly helpful for practical navigation or hunting purposes. Progress comes in small increments. Learning to control the timing of your clicks, focusing the sound beam through your melon with something approaching intentionality, and gradually developing the ability to interpret the returning echoes as something more specific than definitely ocean, probably contains fish. It's slow work, complicated by your tendency to get excited about small successes and immediately lose all technique in your enthusiasm. Your inaugural hunting expedition has all the grace and efficiency of a toddler trying to catch soap bubbles with oven mitts while riding a unicycle. The concept seems straightforward enough. Locate fish, approach fish, catch fish, consume fish. In practice, it involves a complex series of failures that would be impressive if they weren't so thoroughly comprehensive. The target for your first solo hunting attempt is a small group of sardines who seem to be moving in slow motion, either as a courtesy to your learning process or simply to mock your complete inability to coordinate swimming, echolocation, and mouth opening in any sort of productive sequence. They drift lazily near a patch of turtle grass, their silver sides catching the filtered sunlight like a living constellation of bite-sized encouragement. You approach with what you believe is stealth, but probably looks more like an underwater interpretive dance about confusion and poorly controlled enthusiasm. Your swimming technique has evolved from chaotic flailing to purposeful flailing, which represents progress, but doesn't necessarily improve your hunting effectiveness. The sardines watch your approach with the sort of polite interest usually reserved for street performers or natural phenomena. Your echolocation clicks are meant to provide precise targeting information, but instead they seem to alert every fish in the vicinity that something loud and confused is heading their way. The sardines begin a lazy dispersal pattern that suggests they're not particularly concerned about your predatory capabilities, but would prefer not to be in the immediate area when you arrive, and inevitably do something unpredictable. The moment of attack arrives, with all the precision of a controlled demolition performed by someone who's never seen explosives before. You open your mouth, aim in what you believe is the direction of the sardines, and accelerate with the sort of determined clumsiness that characterizes all your major life attempts. The sardines scatter exactly as you arrive, leaving you snapping at water and questioning not just your hunting technique, but your fundamental understanding of how predation is supposed to work. Your mouth closes on a satisfying portion of ocean water, a small piece of floating algae, and what might be a very confused copepod who was in the wrong place at the wrong time. This is not the triumphant first hunt you had envisioned, though the copepod probably has a story that will entertain his friends for weeks. Your mother, who has been observing this display from a respectful distance, swims over to demonstrate the proper technique with the sort of effortless precision that makes it look like the fish are volunteering to be caught. Her approach is quiet, controlled, and results in a clean capture that happens so smoothly you almost miss it. The fish she catches seems surprised but not particularly traumatized by the experience. When you attempt to replicate her movements, your body seems to interpret the instructions as swim faster while clicking more loudly and opening your mouth at random intervals. This approach proves ineffective for hunting but does succeed in clearing the area of all potential prey for a considerable radius around your position. Your second attempt involves a different school of fish, small grunt fish, who are either braver or less observant than the sardines. This time you try to incorporate the lessons learned from your first failure. Slower approach, more controlled clicking, better timing on the mouth, opening. The result is marginally less chaotic, but equally unsuccessful, as you manage to catch a piece of floating kelp, and somehow, your own tail. The kelp dangles from your mouth like an unwanted appetizer, while you try to figure out how you managed to bite your own tail during what was supposed to be a straight-line attack on a stationary target. The gruntfish seem as puzzled by this development as you are, though they take advantage of your confusion to relocate to safer waters. Your mother's patience during these early hunting attempts deserves some sort of marine mammal parenting award. She provides gentle guidance. Try to coordinate your approach speed with your mouth timing. Perhaps aim slightly ahead of where the fish currently are, accounting for their movement. Consider not biting yourself during the attack phase. The learning curve for hunting proves to be less of a curve and more of a series of plateaus separated by sudden drops into confusion. Each attempt teaches you something new about what doesn't work, which is valuable information but doesn't address the immediate problem of needing to catch fish to eat. Your breakthrough comes accidentally when you're practicing clicking at a piece of drifting seaweed and a small fish swims directly into your echolocation beam at the exact moment you happen to open your mouth. The fish, apparently as surprised as you are, ends up caught more through mutual confusion than any particular hunting skill on your part. The success is satisfying but impossible to replicate, since it depended entirely on remarkable timing and a particularly inattentive fish. Still, it proves that hunting is theoretically possible, even if your current technique relies heavily on luck and the cooperation of unusually obliging prey. The juvenile dolphins in your pod have formed what appears to be a complex social hierarchy based on criteria that seem to shift daily, but generally involve some combination of swimming speed, echolocation accuracy, and the highly subjective measure of coolness under pressure. You quickly discover that you rank somewhere between that weird kid who brings seaweed snacks and the one who still needs help with basic, navigation, which places you firmly in the social category of harmless but questionable. The social structure among your peers resembles the sort of elaborate pecking order found in middle school cafeterias, if middle schools were underwater and the students were marine mammals with sonar capabilities. At the top of the hierarchy sits Surge, a juvenile male whose dorsal fin has developed the sort of elegant curve that apparently signals genetic superiority, and whose swimming technique looks like something from an instructional video about proper dolphin locomotion. Below Surge are the competent swimmers who can hunt successfully, navigate without getting lost, and perform social behaviors without accidentally involving innocent bystanders or stationary objects. These dolphins form the respectable middle tier of juvenile society, not spectacular, but reliable enough to be included in group activities without adult supervision. Then there's you, occupying a social niche that could charitably be described as comic relief, and less charitably as cautionary example. Your signature move has become the accidental somersault, which you perform frequently and never on purpose, usually while attempting to do something completely unrelated like swimming in a straight line or turning around without involving kelp. Playtime involves games that seem designed to highlight your particular areas of incompetence while providing entertainment for your more coordinated peers. Chase the Confused Fish becomes a group activity where you serve as the primary confusion generator, your chaotic approach scattering prey in all directions while the other juveniles dart in to make clean captures from the resulting chaos. Who can make the weirdest noise is a game you're surprisingly competitive in, though not necessarily in the intended way. While the other juveniles produce deliberate, controlled vocalizations designed to be amusing, your contributions tend to be the accidental result of trying to echolocate while swimming, resulting in sound patterns that are genuinely weird, but not particularly intentional. The older juveniles in the pod have developed the sort of casual confidence that comes with being almost adults who haven't yet encountered situations that require actual adult-level problem-solving. They tell stories about shark encounters and deep-water adventures with the sort of casual bravado that suggests they've never actually left the shallow waters near the reef, but have heard impressive stories from someone who might have known someone who once saw a shark from a distance. These tales of adventure and danger serve as the juvenile equivalent of campfire stories, designed to establish social status through association with impressive events, whether or not the storyteller was actually present for said events. You listen to these stories with the appropriate level of wide-eyed attention, while privately noting that most of the dangerous encounters seem to have resolved themselves through the strategic application of swimming away quickly. Your attempts to contribute to these storytelling sessions typically involve recounting your various mishaps and failures, which the group receives as unintentional comedy rather than adventure narratives. Your story about getting lost while following what you thought was pod echolocation but turned out to be fishing boat sonar becomes a popular tale, though not for the reasons you intended. Social grooming becomes another area where your technique requires refinement. The process should be relaxing and bonding, but your attempts at mutual grooming tend to involve more vigorous scrubbing than is strictly necessary, leading to complaints from your grooming partners about your approach being enthusiastic but unnecessarily thorough. You're trying to be helpful, but apparently there's a difference between grooming and attempting to remove someone's skin through friction. Group hunting exercises reveal the challenges of coordinating your particular skill set with the pod's collective hunting strategy. While the other juveniles can position themselves according to plan and execute coordinated maneuvers, your role typically becomes wildcard element or distraction generator. The adults have learned to incorporate your unpredictability into their hunting plans, using your chaotic approach as a way to scatter fish into more predictable patterns for the competent hunters to exploit. The social dynamics of meal sharing prove equally complex. There's an unwritten protocol about who gets to eat first, who shares with whom, and how much enthusiastic clicking is appropriate during feeding time. You frequently violate these protocols not through malice but through simple obliviousness to the subtle social cues that govern group dining behavior. Your position in the pod's social structure isn't entirely without advantages. Your reputation for harmless incompetence means that other juveniles don't see you as competition for social status or resources, making you a safe companion for dolphins who are themselves struggling with the complexities of adolescent pod life. You become the friend that other juveniles practice their social skills on, knowing that your judgment is neither harsh nor particularly insightful. The adults in the pod seem to view you with a mixture of amusement and concern, as if they're not entirely sure whether you represent delayed development or simply an alternative approach to dolphin existence. Your mother fields questions from other adults about your progress, with the sort of diplomatic responses that suggest everyone is hoping you'll eventually figure things out while preparing for the possibility that you might not. Despite your questionable status in the juvenile hierarchy, you find yourself surprisingly content with your role as the pod's resident source of unintentional entertainment and cautionary examples. There's something liberating about having such low expectations placed on your performance that any display of basic competence feels like a major achievement worthy of celebration. Growing into your adult size feels like someone replaced your familiar body with a rental car you don't know how to drive, complete with an owner's manual written in a language you don't speak, and controls that seem to have been designed by someone with a fundamentally different understanding of how bodies should work. Your fins, which had finally reached a comfortable relationship with your swimming intentions, are suddenly too big, and respond to commands with about a 2-second delay that makes navigation feel like driving with significant input lag. Your tail has developed ambitions that exceed your coordination abilities. What used to be a manageable appendage for basic propulsion has transformed into a powerful rudder that seems to have strong opinions about which direction you should be traveling, opinions that don't always align with your actual intentions. Swimming in a straight line becomes an exercise in negotiation between what you want to do and what your tail thinks would be more interesting. The echolocation system you'd finally gotten the hang of seems to have developed a stutter that makes hunting even more complicated than it was during your early days of complete incompetence. Your sonar clicks now come out in irregular patterns that sound like someone tapping Morse code while having a seizure, providing information about your surroundings that's technically accurate but delivered with the timing and clarity of a broken radio. Your mother watches these developments with the patient expression of someone who's seen this particular brand of chaos before and knows it will eventually resolve itself into something resembling adult competence. Though the timeline remains optimistically vague, she offers encouraging observations like, "Your coordination will catch up to your size eventually," and "Most dolphins go through this phase without permanent injury to themselves or others." The other adolescents in your pod are going through similar growing pains, which provide some comfort and a lot of mutual commiseration. Everyone's bumping into coral formations they've successfully navigated for years, misjudging distances with the sort of universal teenage clumsiness that transcends species, and developing the kind of self-consciousness that makes even basic activities feel like public performances. Serge, who had maintained his position as the most coordinated juvenile in the pod, now swims with the slightly desperate concentration of someone trying to maintain their reputation while dealing with fins that have suddenly become 3 sizes too large. His previously elegant swimming style has developed an element of frantic improvisation that makes his movements look like aquatic interpretive dance about confusion and determination. Group activities become exercises in collective adaptation, as everyone learns to account for their new physical dimensions and unpredictable coordination. Simple games like Follow the Leader turn into complex navigation challenges when the leader suddenly can't judge distances properly and the followers are dealing with their own spatial awareness issues. You discover that you have a particular talent for finding the most inconvenient places to surface for air, a skill that seems to have developed along with your new body proportions. Your timing for surfacing has become precisely calibrated to coincide with the most awkward possible circumstances, directly under floating jellyfish who seem personally offended by your sudden appearance, in the middle of pelican fishing formations where your emergence creates chaos among birds who had been conducting their operations with military precision, or next to boats full of humans who immediately point cameras at you like you're performing some sort of marine cabaret show. The humans seem particularly excited by these accidental encounters, making the kind of enthusiastic noises that suggest they interpret your poor timing as an intentional display put on for their entertainment. Their cameras flash and click while you try to figure out how to submerge gracefully without looking like you're fleeing from your audience, which you absolutely are. Your attempts to avoid these inconvenient surfacing locations only seem to make them more likely to occur. The ocean apparently has a sense of humor about adolescent dolphin awkwardness and takes particular pleasure in arranging for your air brakes to coincide with the maximum possible level of social discomfort. The physical changes also affect your relationship with familiar spaces. Coral formations you've swum through hundreds of times now require careful navigation to avoid collisions. Your childhood shortcuts through narrow gaps become impassable, forcing you to find new routes that accommodate your larger size while preserving what remains of your dignity. Sleep becomes complicated when your body no longer fits comfortably in your preferred resting spots. The shallow, sandy areas where you used to doze peacefully are now too small, forcing you to find new locations that can accommodate your expanded dimensions without leaving you vulnerable to current changes or passing predators. Feeding takes on new challenges as your hunting technique, which had finally evolved from completely hopeless to occasionally successful, must now be recalibrated for your new physical capabilities. Your mouth is larger, which should theoretically make catching fish easier, but your coordination is worse, which more than compensates for any potential advantages. The social dynamics of adolescent pod life become increasingly complex as everyone tries to maintain their established relationships while dealing with their changing bodies and developing personalities. Established hierarchies shift as previously competent dolphins struggle with their new proportions, while formerly clumsy individuals occasionally discover that their new size suits them better than their previous dimensions. Your position in the social order remains comfortably low, which provides stability during this period of general chaos. Nobody expects impressive performances from you, so your continued displays of creative incompetence don't damage your reputation or social standing. If anything, your consistency in providing entertainment through mishaps becomes a valuable social service during a time when everyone else is too focused on their own awkwardness to be properly amusing. The adults in the pod watch this collective adolescent chaos with the sort of bemused patience that comes from having survived their own awkward phases and knowing that this particular type of dysfunction is both temporary and universal. They offer practical advice like, try to surface away from the fishing boats, and remember that your tail is now longer when backing out of tight spaces. Your hunting technique has evolved from completely hopeless to occasionally successful by accident, which represents significant progress, even if the fundamental approach still relies heavily on luck and the cooperation of particularly inattentive prey. The transition from can't catch anything to sometimes catches things under optimal conditions feels like a major life achievement, even though you're aware that your definition of optimal conditions includes factors like fish swimming directly into your mouth and no witnesses to observe technique. You've developed a strategy that involves following more competent pod members at what you hope is a discreet distance and swooping in to claim whatever confused fish they leave behind after their successful hunts. It's not dignified, and it requires a certain amount of social thick-skinnedness to ignore the looks your pod mates give you when you appear suddenly to scavenge their hunting aftermath, but it's surprisingly effective as a supplemental feeding strategy. This approach has taught you to recognize the signs of successful hunts by other dolphins. The particular pattern of clicks that indicates a targeted approach, the way the water moves when someone executes a clean capture, and the specific type of fish scatter that suggests opportunity rather than chaos. You've become an expert in reading the aquatic equivalent of body language that indicates successful hunter who might drop something edible. Your scavenging technique has developed its own sophistication. You've learned to position yourself at optimal angles to intercept fish fleeing from other dolphins' hunting attempts, to time your approach so that you arrive just as the primary hunter is finishing their capture, and to look sufficiently pathetic that more successful hunters occasionally take pity on you and share their catches. The pod begins teaching cooperative hunting techniques, which require the sort of timing and coordination you're still working on developing. These group hunting strategies involve complex choreography where each dolphin has a specific role: herders who drive fish toward the trap, blockers who prevent escape routes, and finishers who make the actual captures. The precision required for these maneuvers is impressive and completely beyond your current capabilities. Your role in these group hunts typically involves being the distraction, not intentionally, but because your approach tends to send fish scattering in unpredictable directions that sometimes, miraculously, lead them directly into your podmates' paths. The adults have learned to incorporate your chaotic hunting style into their strategic planning, using your unpredictability as a way to create opportunities for more skilled hunters. During one memorable group hunt, Your attempt to execute a coordinated pincer movement results in you approaching from entirely the wrong angle and somehow herding a school of confused pompano directly into a trap formed by 3 other dolphins. The success of this maneuver has nothing to do with your intentions and everything to do with the pompano's panic response, but it earns you temporary recognition as a valuable team member. You perfect the art of looking purposeful while having no idea what you're doing, a skill that will serve you well throughout your adult life and most social situations. This involves maintaining an expression of focused concentration while internally improvising your way through situations that require knowledge and abilities you don't actually possess. The key is to appear confident in your confusion, as if your unconventional approach is deliberate rather than accidental. The development of this skill comes through necessity, as the pod begins expecting you to contribute meaningfully to group hunting efforts. Since you can't actually hunt effectively, you learn to contribute through enthusiastic participation and the sort of creative misinterpretation of instructions that occasionally produces useful results purely by coincidence. Your hunting success rate improves marginally through the application of pure persistence. While you can't reliably catch fish through skill, you can catch them through the mathematical principle that if you attempt something enough times, eventually probability will work in your favor. This approach requires a lot of energy and patience, but it occasionally produces results that look like competence to casual observers. The fish in your territory begin to recognize your hunting style and develop appropriate countermeasures. Schools of baitfish learn to scatter in specific patterns when they detect your particular brand of echolocation chaos, while larger fish simply ignore you as a potential threat. This recognition forces you to expand your hunting range and seek out fish communities that haven't yet learned to identify your acoustic signature. Your specialty becomes hunting in murky water, where your unconventional techniques are less obvious and your success rate accidentally higher. Poor visibility conditions level the playing field by reducing everyone's hunting effectiveness to something approaching your normal level of competence. In silty water stirred up by storms or currents, your chaotic approach becomes less of a disadvantage and more of an alternative strategy. The pod's hunting instructors attempt to refine your technique through patient demonstration and increasingly specific feedback. Their suggestions evolve from general guidance like, try to aim for the fish, to detailed technical advice like, consider approaching from upstream so your echolocation clicks. Don't alert the entire school to your presence before you arrive. You develop a repertoire of hunting situations where your success rate approaches acceptable levels. Confused fish in shallow water, schools of fish already disrupted by other hunters, individual fish that appear to be experiencing their own coordination problems, and any hunting scenario that involves more luck than skill. These specialized niches allow you to contribute to the pod's food-gathering efforts while acknowledging your limitations. The most significant breakthrough comes when you accidentally discover that your erratic hunting style makes you effective at catching sick or injured fish who can't execute the evasive maneuvers that normally allow healthy fish to escape your approaches. This specialized role as a hunter of compromised prey becomes your contribution to the pod's hunting strategy, providing a valuable service while working within your actual capabilities. The ocean, it turns out, has invisible property lines that everyone except you seems to be aware of, mapped according to a complex system of traditional use rights, seasonal agreements, and the sort of neighborhood politics that would make homeowner associations seem straightforward by comparison. These boundaries shift with the seasons, fish migrations, and the changing dynamics of pod relationships, creating a diplomatic landscape that requires constant attention and the sort of social awareness you're still developing. Your first encounter with a rival pod happens when you accidentally cross into what they consider their exclusive hunting grounds, while chasing a particularly attractive school of anchovies who had been leading you on a merry chase through what you assumed was neutral waters. The realization that you've wandered into disputed territory comes when you surface for air and find yourself surrounded by unfamiliar dolphins clicking in what are clearly not welcoming tones. The confrontation involves a lot of posturing, aggressive clicking, and swimming in circles while trying to look intimidating activities that seem designed to establish dominance through synchronized swimming and vocal performance rather than actual violence. The rival pod arranges itself in an impressive formation that suggests both military precision and choreographed intimidation, while your pod responds with their own display of organized menace. You contribute to this standoff by floating slightly behind the others and occasionally making supportive noises, like a backup singer who doesn't know the words but is committed to participating anyway. Your role in the diplomatic process seems to involve looking generally aligned with your pod's position while avoiding any actions that might escalate the situation through incompetence or misunderstanding. The territorial dispute follows what appears to be a well-established protocol: initial posturing to establish the seriousness of the situation, escalating vocal displays to demonstrate resolve, and increasingly complex swimming patterns that serve as the aquatic equivalent of chest thumping. Both sides seem familiar with this routine, suggesting that these confrontations are regular occurrences governed by traditional diplomatic procedures. Your mother takes the lead in representing your pod's position, engaging in a series of rapid-fire clicks and whistles that constitute what you assume is formal diplomatic language. The conversation sounds like a combination of legal proceedings and competitive echolocation, with both sides presenting their cases through increasingly elaborate acoustic arguments. The content of these negotiations remains largely incomprehensible to you, but the tone suggests that both sides are making reasonable points about historical use patterns, seasonal fishing rights, and the sort of precedent-based arguments that characterize property disputes across species. Your contribution to these discussions involves nodding supportively at appropriate moments and trying to look like someone who understands the complexities of aquatic real estate law. The standoff continues for what feels like hours but is probably only about 20 minutes, with both sides maintaining their aggressive postures while engaging in the sort of detailed diplomatic discourse that suggests this particular boundary dispute has been ongoing for some time. The fish you had been chasing disappear entirely during the negotiations, making the whole territorial question somewhat moot from a practical standpoint. The territorial dispute resolves itself when both pods get distracted by a passing shrimp boat whose engines create the sort of acoustic interference that makes continued diplomatic discussion impossible. The arrival of the boat also brings the possibility of easy feeding opportunities, since shrimp boats often attract schools of fish that follow the vessel for scraps and disturbed seafloor creatures. Both pods abandon their territorial negotiations with the sort of immediate consensus that suggests food opportunities take precedence over property disputes in the complex hierarchy of dolphin priorities. The boundary conflict simply evaporates as everyone's attention shifts to the more immediate prospect of an easy meal, leaving the territorial questions unresolved but temporarily forgotten. You make a mental note that most conflicts in the ocean are solved by either food appearing or everyone getting bored, which seems like a practical approach to dispute resolution that could probably be applied to many human situations as well. The effectiveness of distraction as a diplomatic tool suggests that attention span limitations might be more useful for maintaining peace than formal conflict resolution procedures. The aftermath of the territorial dispute involves a gradual return to normal hunting patterns, with both pods maintaining a respectful distance from the contested area while avoiding any formal acknowledgement of the boundary questions that had triggered the original confrontation. The solution seems to involve everyone pretending that the dispute never happened while quietly adjusting their behavior to avoid future conflicts. Your pod's post-conflict analysis of the situation focuses on practical lessons: the importance of maintaining awareness of seasonal boundary changes, the value of avoiding attractive prey that might lead you into contested waters, and the diplomatic utility of having shrimp boats appear at convenient moments during territorial negotiations. The experience teaches you that ocean politics involve a complex web of relationships, historical precedents, and seasonal agreements that require constant attention and social awareness. Your role in these diplomatic situations will likely continue to involve supportive, floating, and appropriate noises, which suits your current skill set and interest level perfectly. The territorial system, you realize, exists to prevent conflicts over resources by establishing predictable use patterns that allow different pods to coexist without constant competition. Your understanding of these arrangements remains rudimentary, but you develop an appreciation for the complexity of maintaining social order in an environment where property lines are invisible and enforcement mechanisms rely entirely on community consensus and social pressure. Your first solo expedition beyond the familiar reef system happens entirely by accident when you follow what you think is your pod's echolocation calls, but turns out to be a fishing boat's sonar operating on a frequency that your adolescent hearing apparently interprets as familiar dolphin voices suggesting interesting activities ahead. By the time you realize your mistake, roughly around the moment when you surface expecting to find your pod mates, and instead discover open ocean extending to the horizon in all directions, you're miles from home in water so deep you can't see the bottom and probably wouldn't want to if you could. The realization that you've become thoroughly lost hits with the particular combination of panic and embarrassment that characterizes most of your major life mistakes. Your echolocation, which had been improving steadily until this moment, suddenly seems completely inadequate for the task of determining which direction leads home versus which directions lead to more open ocean, deeper water, and the sort of marine environments where dolphins your size serve as snacks rather than predators. The deep ocean is less mysterious aquatic wonderland and more really big, empty space that makes you feel existentially insignificant, like floating in the middle of a three-dimensional desert where the landmarks are measured in miles and the navigation reference points assume a level of competence you clearly don't possess. The water here is a different color, deeper blue, that seems to absorb light rather than reflect it, and the fish are either too small to bother with or large enough to consider you a potential appetizer. Your first instinct is to swim rapidly in what you hope is the direction of home, but the complete absence of familiar references makes direction finding roughly equivalent to guessing. The sun's position provides some theoretical guidance, but you realize you've never paid attention to solar navigation during your previous travels with the pod, having always relied on following more experienced dolphins who presumably knew where they were going. The fish here operate according to different rules than the reef communities you're familiar with. Schools of pelagic species move in patterns that seem designed for open water efficiency rather than the territorial behaviors you understand. They show no interest in your hunting attempts and seem mildly puzzled by your presence, as if wondering what a coastal dolphin is doing in their deep water neighborhood. Your journey home involves asking directions from a sea turtle who speaks in riddles and seems to find your situation amusing rather than concerning. The turtle, an ancient-looking individual whose shell shows the sort of wear patterns that suggest decades of ocean travel, provides navigation advice in the form of cryptic observations about current patterns, seasonal wind directions, and the migration routes of fish species you've never heard of. Follow the water that tastes like home, the turtle suggests, which seems like the sort of advice that would be more helpful if you had developed the sophisticated palate necessary to distinguish between different flavors of ocean water. Your attempts to implement this guidance involve a lot of swimming in circles while trying to detect subtle differences in salinity and mineral content that are apparently obvious to more experienced ocean travelers. Getting briefly adopted by a pod of pilot whales who seem concerned about your life choices provides temporary security, but also highlights the extent of your navigation incompetence. The pilot whales are clearly seasoned deep-water travelers who navigate with the sort of confidence that comes from understanding ocean currents, magnetic fields, and probably celestial navigation techniques that are completely beyond your current education level. The pilot whales include you in their group, with the sort of polite tolerance usually reserved for lost tourists or exchange students who don't speak the local language very well. They adjust their travel speed to accommodate your smaller size and less efficient swimming style, while engaging in conversations that suggest they're discussing your situation with the kind of concern typically directed toward individuals who are clearly out of their depth, both literally and figuratively. Their route takes you through parts of the ocean you didn't know existed, underwater canyons that stretch beyond your echolocation range, thermal layers where the water temperature changes dramatically within a few feet of depth, and current systems that move with the sort of power that makes swimming feel optional. The pilot whales navigate these features with casual expertise, while you try not to look as overwhelmed as you feel. The breakthrough in your journey home comes when you finally learn to follow a trail of familiar-smelling water, a complex mixture of reef, runoff, coastal nutrients, and the particular chemical signature that identifies your home territory. This olfactory navigation technique requires a level of sensory attention you've never developed before, focusing on subtle water chemistry changes that indicate proximity to familiar ecosystems. The trail leads you through a series of underwater valleys and over seamounts that serve as stepping stones between the deep ocean and your coastal habitat. Each landmark represents progress toward familiar territory, though the journey takes considerably longer than your original trip away from home due to your more careful navigation approach and frequent stops to confirm your directional choices. Your eventual return to familiar waters is greeted by your pod with the sort of relief mixed with exasperation that suggests they've been conducting search efforts while also developing backup plans for your potential permanent absence. Your mother's greeting combines genuine concern for your safety with pointed questions about your decision-making process and navigation skills. The experience teaches you valuable lessons about the importance of attention during group travel, the complexity of ocean navigation, and the difference between coastal and pelagic environments. More importantly, it provides you with your first genuine adventure story, one that involves actual challenges, overcome through persistence and problem-solving, rather than the usual catalogue of amusing failures and accidental successes. Your transition to adult status in the pod happens gradually, like slowly realizing you're expected to know what you're doing without anyone officially telling you or providing a ceremony to mark the transition. One day you notice that the juveniles are looking to you for guidance during hunting expeditions and social situations, which seems like a terrible mistake in judgment on their part, but also represents a significant shift in how the community perceives your role and capabilities. The realization that you've somehow become an adult dolphin despite your continued sense of having no idea what you're doing comes with the sort of imposter syndrome that probably affects most people who find themselves in positions of responsibility. The younger dolphins assume that your additional months of experience have translated into wisdom and competence, while you're still trying to figure out basic life skills like swimming in a straight line consistently and catching fish on purpose rather than by accident. You've developed your own hunting style that could charitably be called creative and less charitably called chaotic, but somehow effective. Your approach involves a combination of persistence, opportunism, and the sort of unconventional techniques that work just well enough to produce results, even if they wouldn't be featured in any instructional materials about proper dolphin hunting methods. Your specialty becomes hunting in murky water where your unconventional techniques are less obvious and your success rate accidentally higher. Poor visibility conditions create an environment where everyone's hunting effectiveness decreases to levels approaching your normal competence, making you relatively more successful in situations that challenge more skilled hunters. This environmental niche becomes your professional specialty, like being the expert who gets called in when normal methods don't work. The pod begins including you in adult decisions about seasonal migration routes, feeding ground selections, and which shipping lanes to avoid during different times of year. These discussions involve complex considerations about fish populations, weather patterns, predator activities, and human maritime traffic that require the sort of big-picture thinking you're still developing. Your contributions to these discussions tend toward the practical rather than the strategic. Let's go where the fish are, and maybe don't swim directly at the large moving objects. While these observations might seem obvious, they often provide useful grounding for conversations that can become overly complicated with theoretical considerations and hypothetical scenarios. The other adults seem to appreciate your practical perspective, particularly your tendency to focus on immediate concerns rather than elaborate long-term planning. Your approach to decision-making involves asking questions like, where can we find food? And what's the easiest way to get there without encountering problems? Which often cuts through complex discussions and identifies the core issues that need to be addressed. Your role in the pod's social structure evolves from harmless incompetent to reliably practical adult who can be counted on for straightforward solutions to immediate problems. This represents significant progress, even if it doesn't involve the sort of dramatic leadership or exceptional skills that characterize other adult pod members. The younger dolphins seek you out for advice about hunting techniques, navigation challenges, and social situations, apparently operating under the assumption that your experience translates into wisdom. Your counseling style involves sharing your various failures and mistakes while explaining what you learned from each experience, which seems to provide valuable guidance even if it's not the sort of inspiring mentorship they might have expected. You discover that your history of creative, problem-solving, and persistent attempts to overcome your limitations has actually prepared you well for helping younger dolphins who are struggling with their own challenges. Your advice tends to focus on practical coping strategies rather than theoretical excellence. Try this approach until something works, and don't let perfect be the enemy of good enough. The respect you earn from the community comes not from exceptional abilities, but from consistent effort and the sort of reliability that makes you a valuable team member, even if you're not the most skilled individual hunter or navigator. Your reputation becomes built on showing up consistently, contributing what you can, and maintaining a positive attitude about collective challenges. Your hunting success rate has improved to the point where you can reliably feed yourself and occasionally contribute to the pod's overall food gathering efforts. This practical competence, combined with your experience dealing with various challenges and mishaps, makes you a useful member of the adult community, even if your specific skills don't match traditional expectations of dolphin excellence. The transition to adult status also involves taking responsibility for younger pod members during group activities. Your approach to supervision involves keeping everyone together, preventing dangerous mistakes, and providing the sort of steady presence that allows younger dolphins to explore their capabilities while maintaining reasonable safety margins. You find that your own experience with making mistakes and learning from consequences has prepared you well for understanding the challenges that younger dolphins face during their development. Your mentoring style involves patient observation, practical advice, and the sort of supportive presence that encourages learning through experience rather than trying to prevent all possible mistakes. Courtship rituals among dolphins involve elaborate displays of swimming prowess, gift-giving in the form of carefully selected seaweed or interesting shells, and synchronized swimming that requires a level of coordination you're still developing despite your recent transition to official adult status. The romantic expectations of your species apparently assume competence in areas where you continue to demonstrate creativity rather than skill, making the entire courtship process feel like a performance evaluation for abilities you're not entirely sure you possess. Your first attempt at impressing a potential mate involves a lot of showing off that mostly demonstrates why showing off is a particularly bad idea when your baseline competence level leaves little margin for error. The object of your romantic interest is a graceful female named Coral, who possesses the sort of effortless swimming ability and social confidence that makes your own capabilities look even more questionable by comparison. Your signature courtship move, an attempted triple barrel roll designed to demonstrate agility and coordination, results in you getting tangled in kelp while upside down, creating a display that resembles aquatic interpretive dance about confusion and poor planning rather than the impressive athletic demonstration you had intended. The kelp wraps around your fins with the sort of thoroughness that suggests it has been waiting for exactly this opportunity to embarrass you in front of someone whose opinion matters. Coral watches this performance with the sort of polite attention usually reserved for street performers or natural disasters, her expression suggesting a combination of concern for your safety and embarrassment on your behalf. She swims away while you're still trying to extricate yourself from the kelp, either out of genuine worry about your coordination problems or diplomatic recognition that your courtship technique requires significant development before it reaches acceptable levels. Your second attempt at romantic engagement involves bringing Coral, a carefully selected piece of sea fan that you found during one of your hunting expeditions. The gift-giving approach seems safer than athletic displays, requiring thought and consideration rather than physical coordination. Unfortunately, your choice of sea fan turns out to be home to a small but aggressive crab who emerges from the coral structure just as you're presenting it to Coral, leading to a brief but chaotic encounter that ends with everyone involved fleeing in different directions. The romantic advice you receive from other pod members tends toward suggestions that highlight your existing limitations rather than providing workable solutions. Try to be more graceful, and maybe practice swimming in straight lines before attempting complex maneuvers, are technically accurate observations, but don't address the fundamental challenge of developing capabilities you've been working on for years without notable success. Your mother's romantic guidance focuses on practical considerations. Perhaps find someone who appreciates consistency rather than flashy displays, and consider that there might be dolphins who value reliability over coordination. This advice seems designed to manage expectations rather than improve performance, but it does suggest alternative approaches to courtship that might work better with your actual skill set. Eventually, you learn that the most effective romantic strategy involves simply being consistently present and moderately helpful, like offering to share good fishing spots or providing backup during encounters with aggressive fish or territorial disputes with other pods. This approach requires persistence and genuine concern for Coral's welfare rather than impressive displays of ability you don't actually possess. Romance, it turns out, is less about grand gestures and more about not being completely useless in everyday situations while demonstrating the sort of steady reliability that suggests you might be a valuable long-term partner despite your obvious limitations in traditional areas of dolphin competence. Your courtship success comes from proving that you can contribute meaningfully to shared activities even if your contributions tend toward the practical rather than the impressive. Your relationship with Coral develops through shared hunting expeditions, where your role involves providing additional echolocation coverage and serving as backup in case her primary hunting attempts encounter unexpected complications. This partnership approach allows you to demonstrate value through teamwork rather than individual excellence, which suits your capabilities much better than competitive displays. The courtship process teaches you that successful relationships often involve complementary strengths rather than matching abilities. Coral's grace and hunting skill combine well with your persistence and practical problem-solving approach, creating a partnership that works more effectively than either individual effort. Your different approaches to challenges often provide alternative solutions when standard techniques don't work. Your romantic success ultimately comes from demonstrating that you can be consistently helpful and emotionally supportive rather than occasionally impressive. Coral seems to appreciate your steady presence and practical contributions more than she would value spectacular but unreliable displays of ability that you couldn't maintain over time. The relationship develops into a comfortable partnership built on mutual respect for different strengths and tolerance for individual limitations. Your courtship experience teaches you that successful romance often involves finding someone who appreciates your actual qualities, rather than trying to develop qualities that don't match your natural abilities or interests. Claiming your own section of ocean involves a complex negotiation process that makes human property disputes look refreshingly straightforward by comparison. The underwater real estate market operates according to rules that nobody writes down, enforced by social pressure and the occasional aggressive posturing display, with property values determined by factors like fish density, current patterns, and proximity to places where you're unlikely to be eaten by something larger than yourself. Your first step in establishing territorial claims involves conducting what amounts to an environmental impact assessment of potential areas, though your version focuses more on how many fish live here and what are the chances of shark encounters, rather than formal ecological surveys. The ideal territory would combine prime hunting grounds near the reef, convenient access to deep water for emergencies, and the sort of natural boundaries that make defense easier than constant vigilance. The reality of ocean real estate availability quickly adjusts your expectations downward. The prime locations are already occupied by established adults who've held their territories for years and have no interest in relocating to accommodate your housing needs. The available properties tend toward what could charitably be called fixer-uppers, or less charitably called areas that everyone else had good reasons for avoiding. Your territory negotiations begin with the previous residents, a diverse community that includes fish who've been using the area as a nursery, sea turtles who consider it a traditional rest stop on their migration routes, and the occasional shark who treats everywhere as their personal dining room and seems personally offended by the concept of property boundaries. Each group has established usage patterns and expectations that must be acknowledged or renegotiated. The fish communities present the most complex negotiations, since they've developed elaborate social structures around specific coral formations and feeding areas. Schools of gruntfish have established territories within your potential territory, creating a nested hierarchy of property claims that requires diplomatic finesse to navigate. Your approach involves respectful acknowledgement of their prior claims while establishing your own rights to reasonable hunting activities. The sea turtles are more amenable to sharing arrangements, though their definition of temporary rest stop tends toward extended visits that can last weeks. Their negotiations involve patient explanations of traditional migration patterns, historical usage rights, and the sort of precedent-based arguments that suggest turtle property law is more sophisticated than most human legal systems. Your territory ends up being a compromise between what you wanted, prime hunting grounds near the reef with excellent access to social activities, and what you could actually defend, a modest patch of seagrass beds with decent fish traffic and minimal shark activity. The final boundaries encompass an area that's not glamorous but functional, like owning a small apartment in a safe neighborhood rather than a mansion in a questionable area. The seagrass beds that form the center of your territory offer practical advantages, even if they lack the prestige of coral reef frontage. The grass provides shelter for small fish and invertebrates, creating a reliable food source that doesn't require extensive hunting expeditions. The sandy patches between grass clusters offer comfortable resting areas and good visibility for monitoring territorial boundaries. The eastern boundary of your territory follows a natural ridgeline that provides excellent acoustic properties for echolocation, allowing you to monitor activities across a wide area without constant physical patrols. The western edge borders a deeper channel that offers escape routes during emergencies and access to the larger pod's territorial waters for social activities. You spend considerable time and energy marking your boundaries through strategic echolocation patterns and regular patrols, which mostly involves swimming around in circles while looking official and trying to project the sort of confident territorial presence that discourages boundary testing by ambitious neighbors. Your marking technique involves repeated echolocation sweeps that establish acoustic signatures associated with your presence. The patrol routine develops into a comfortable daily exercise that serves multiple purposes: boundary maintenance, general fitness, and the sort of purposeful swimming that makes you look like someone who knows what they're doing and has important territorial business to conduct. Your patrol patterns become familiar to local residents, who learn to time their activities around your schedule. The local fish communities gradually learn to recognize your presence and begin treating you as part of the neighborhood rather than a visiting threat. This social acceptance process involves weeks of consistent behavior that demonstrates your intentions to coexist peacefully rather than disrupt established ecological relationships. Schools of small fish develop feeding patterns that account for your hunting activities while maintaining their own social structures. Your territorial management style emphasizes cooperation over domination, working with existing residents to develop sustainable use patterns rather than attempting to impose new rules through force. This approach requires more patience than aggressive territory acquisition, but results in more stable, long-term arrangements with fewer ongoing conflicts. The establishment of territorial boundaries also involves negotiations with neighboring dolphins who hold adjacent areas. These discussions focus on shared fishing rights, emergency cooperation agreements, and the sort of good neighbor policies that prevent minor disagreements from escalating into territorial conflicts that drain everyone's energy and accomplish nothing productive. Your territory's reputation develops around reliable fish populations, peaceful coexistence with other species, and the sort of steady management that makes it a desirable location for temporary visits by traveling dolphins. This reputation for hospitality and reasonable territorial policies enhances your standing in the broader community while creating networking opportunities with dolphins from other areas. The defense of your territory involves more diplomacy than actual conflict, since most potential challenges can be discouraged through demonstration of legitimate occupancy and established use patterns. Your approach to territorial defense emphasizes documentation of proper procedures and reasonable boundary maintenance rather than aggressive confrontation with every dolphin who swims through the area. The seasonal variations in fish populations require adaptive management strategies that account for migration patterns, breeding cycles, and the sort of environmental changes that affect territorial productivity. Your management approach involves flexible policies that adjust to changing conditions while maintaining core territorial functions and boundary security. The success of your territorial establishment provides a foundation for adult life that extends beyond simple resource access. Having your own space creates opportunities for privacy, control over social interactions, and the sort of independence that allows you to contribute to pod activities from a position of strength rather than dependence on others' hospitality. Your hunting skills have evolved to the point where you can catch breakfast without having to think about it, leaving more mental energy for important pursuits like perfecting your napping technique, developing strong opinions about water temperature variations, and contemplating the philosophical implications of fish behavior patterns. You've become the dolphin equivalent of someone who's figured out their job well enough to do it competently while thinking about other things, which represents a significant milestone in professional development. The transition from conscious incompetence to unconscious competence in hunting happened so gradually that you didn't notice it until you realized you could carry on conversations while successfully catching fish, a multitasking ability that would have seemed impossible during your early days of struggling with basic swimming coordination. Your hunting technique has developed its own distinctive style that works consistently even if it wouldn't win any awards for elegance or traditional form. Your specialty in murky water hunting has evolved into genuine expertise, making you the pod's go-to dolphin for challenging visibility conditions. When storms stir up sediment or algae blooms reduce clarity, your unconventional approach becomes more effective than traditional techniques that rely on clear sight lines and predictable fish behavior. This specialized knowledge makes you valuable to the community in ways that compensate for your continued limitations in other areas. The pod begins consulting you on matters of local fish migration patterns and optimal hunting strategies, a development that still surprises you given your own memories of being the dolphin who couldn't catch fish without extensive luck and outside assistance. Your advice tends toward the practical and slightly pessimistic. The fish will probably do something different this year, and always have a backup plan for when the easy fish disappear. Your reputation as a practical advisor develops around your tendency to anticipate problems before they become serious issues. While other dolphins focus on optimizing current conditions, your natural inclination toward expecting complications leads to suggestions about contingency planning and alternative strategies that prove valuable when standard approaches encounter unexpected challenges. The fishing advice you provide emphasizes adaptability over technique, encouraging younger dolphins to develop flexible approaches rather than relying on single methods that work well under ideal conditions, but fail when circumstances change. Your teaching focuses on problem-solving skills and creative adaptation rather than perfect execution of traditional hunting patterns. You develop a reputation for being reliable in crisis situations, mainly because your natural pessimism means you're rarely surprised when things go wrong and usually have a reasonable plan B already in mind. This preparedness comes from years of experience with things not working according to plan, leading to the development of backup strategies for most common hunting and navigation scenarios. Your crisis management approach involves remaining calm while implementing alternative solutions, a skill that proves valuable during emergencies when other dolphins are still adjusting to the reality that their primary plans aren't working. Your experience with constant adaptation has prepared you well for situations that require quick thinking and flexible responses to unexpected challenges. The leadership qualities you develop focus on practical coordination rather than inspirational guidance. Your style involves identifying immediate problems, proposing workable solutions, and organizing collective efforts to implement practical responses to challenging situations. This approach suits community needs during crisis situations when theoretical leadership is less useful than hands-on problem-solving. Your hunting success rate has stabilized at levels that allow you to feed yourself reliably while contributing to group hunting efforts when your specialized skills are needed. This practical competence provides the foundation for taking on additional responsibilities within the pod's social structure, including mentoring younger dolphins and participating in strategic planning discussions. The mental energy freed up by achieving hunting competence allows you to develop other interests and skills that enhance your value to the community. You become knowledgeable about current patterns, seasonal water temperature cycles, and the behavioral quirks of local fish populations that affect hunting success rates throughout the year. Your observations about environmental patterns contribute to the pod's collective knowledge base, particularly regarding subtle indicators that predict changes in fish behavior, weather conditions, and seasonal migration timing. This ecological awareness makes you a valuable resource for planning group activities and avoiding potential problems before they develop into serious challenges. The development of professional confidence in hunting allows you to take on teaching responsibilities with younger dolphins who are struggling with similar challenges you faced during your own learning process. Your teaching approach emphasizes patience, persistence, and practical adaptation rather than achieving perfect technique through repetitive practice. Your professional development also includes improved social skills that make you more effective in group hunting situations and territorial negotiations. The experience of overcoming your own limitations has developed empathy and communication abilities that help you work effectively with dolphins who have different strengths and learning styles. The peak performance phase of your adult life is characterized by steady competence rather than dramatic excellence, a professional achievement that provides satisfaction and community value without requiring the sort of exceptional abilities that were never part of your natural skill set. Your success comes from maximizing your actual capabilities rather than trying to develop talents that don't match your interests or aptitudes. Your reputation in the pod settles around being someone who can be counted on to handle routine responsibilities competently while providing practical assistance during challenging situations. This reliable competence makes you a valuable team member whose contributions may not be spectacular but are consistently useful to community goals and collective problem-solving efforts. The arrival of new calves in the pod transforms you from guy who knows where the fish are to responsible adult who should probably set a good example, which is a concerning development given your own track record of learning everything the hard way and providing more cautionary tales than inspirational success stories. The transition to mentor status happens without formal announcement or training, marked mainly by young dolphins beginning to follow you around and ask questions that assume you know what you're doing. Your first mentoring experience involves a young calf named Ripple who demonstrates the same sort of creative swimming technique that characterized your own early development. Watching Ripple attempt basic maneuvers brings back vivid memories of your own struggles with coordination, though observing someone else's learning process provides perspective on just how far you've actually progressed since your own days of swimming sideways and echolocating at rocks. Your teaching style could be described as gentle realism with commentary, an approach that involves demonstrating proper hunting techniques while providing running commentary on all the ways things can go wrong, what to do when they inevitably do go wrong, and how to maintain dignity while recovering from predictable failures. This educational philosophy either prepares young dolphins for reality or gives them anxiety disorders, but it certainly provides comprehensive preparation for the complexities of dolphin existence. The calves seem to enjoy your stories about past failures and mishaps, possibly because it makes their own clumsy attempts seem less catastrophic by comparison, or because your narrative style makes learning feel more like entertainment than formal instruction. You discover that being a cautionary tale is actually a form of mentorship, teaching through example about what not to do while demonstrating that survival is possible even after making most conceivable mistakes. Your approach to teaching hunting emphasizes the importance of persistence over perfect technique, encouraging young dolphins to keep trying different approaches until something works, rather than attempting to master theoretical perfection before practical application. This philosophy reflects your own learning experience and provides hope for calves who are struggling with coordination and confidence issues. Ripple's progress under your mentorship follows a familiar pattern of gradual improvement, punctuated by spectacular failures that provide learning opportunities and entertainment for observers. Your response to these setbacks involves patient encouragement combined with practical advice about how to avoid similar problems in the future, though you acknowledge that some lessons can only be learned through direct experience. Your teaching demonstrations often include intentional mistakes designed to show young dolphins how to recover from common errors, a technique that works well because you have extensive personal experience with every type of hunting, swimming, and navigation failure that calves are likely to encounter. Your ability to demonstrate recovery techniques comes from years of practice in similar situations. The mentoring relationship develops into a comfortable partnership where Ripple provides entertainment through creative interpretations of your instructions while you provide patience, encouragement, and the sort of steady presence that allows experimental learning without serious consequences. Your supervisory style emphasizes safety and persistence while tolerating the sort of creative failures that characterize effective learning. Your reputation as a mentor develops around your ability to work effectively with struggling learners, particularly young dolphins who don't fit traditional teaching approaches or who need additional encouragement to develop confidence in their abilities. Your own experience with non-standard learning styles makes you effective at recognizing and accommodating different educational needs. The other adults in the pod begin referring challenging young dolphins to you for specialized instruction, recognizing that your teaching approach works well with calves who need patient guidance and realistic expectations rather than pressure to achieve immediate excellence. This referral pattern makes you the pod's unofficial specialist in working with learning differences and confidence issues. Your teaching philosophy emphasizes the value of making mistakes as learning opportunities rather than failures to be avoided, an approach that encourages experimental behavior and creative problem solving while building resilience and adaptability. This educational style produces young dolphins who are comfortable with uncertainty and skilled at developing alternative solutions when standard approaches don't work. The success of your mentoring efforts is measured not by producing exceptional young dolphins, but by helping struggling learners develop into competent adults who can contribute meaningfully to pod life, despite their individual limitations. Your teaching focuses on practical life skills and social integration rather than competitive achievement or impressive displays of ability. Your mentoring techniques include collaborative hunting exercises where young dolphins work together to solve problems that would be difficult for any individual, teaching cooperation and mutual support while building practical skills. These group activities allow calves to experience success through teamwork, even when their individual abilities are still developing. The patience required for effective mentoring develops from your own experience with slow learning and gradual improvement, providing you with realistic expectations about the time and effort required to develop competence in complex skills. Your teaching style accommodates different learning speeds and styles while maintaining encouragement and support throughout the process. Your approach to discipline and correction emphasizes natural consequences and problem solving rather than punishment, allowing young dolphins to learn from their mistakes while maintaining positive relationships and trust. This teaching philosophy creates learning environments where calves feel safe to experiment and take reasonable risks while developing judgment and skills. The long-term success of your mentoring is evident in the young adults who credit your patient instruction with helping them develop confidence and practical skills despite early struggles with traditional learning approaches. These success stories enhance your reputation as an educator, while providing satisfaction that your own difficult learning experience has value for helping others navigate similar challenges. The annual migration south becomes less about adventure and more about efficient travel planning as you accumulate years of experience with the route, the optimal timing, and the sort of logistical considerations that turn epic journeys into routine commutes with better scenery. You've learned to pack light, which is remarkably easy when you don't own anything except your accumulated knowledge of current patterns and fishing spots, though mental preparation for long-distance travel requires significant advanced planning. Your migration preparation now involves careful consideration of weather patterns, seasonal fish migrations, and the complex timing required to arrive at feeding areas when food sources are most abundant, while avoiding peak periods of human boat traffic that make navigation more challenging and conversation impossible. The planning process has evolved from follow the pod and hope for the best to sophisticated route optimization based on years of accumulated travel experience. The journey involves weeks of steady swimming punctuated by rest stops at familiar waypoints that have developed the status of old friends in your mental geography. Each stopping point offers known advantages. This underwater valley provides excellent acoustic properties for long-distance communication. That thermal vent maintains perfect water temperature for recovery, and this particular seamount offers reliable current patterns that reduce swimming effort while providing good hunting opportunities. You've developed strong preferences for certain rest areas based on factors that younger dolphins consider unnecessarily specific: the mineral content of thermal springs, the acoustic signature of underwater canyons, and the particular species of fish that frequent different areas during migration seasons. These preferences reflect accumulated experience with subtle environmental differences that affect comfort and recovery during long-distance travel. Travel has become less about discovering new places and more about visiting old favorites with the sort of anticipation usually reserved for returning to beloved vacation destinations. Your mental map of the migration route includes detailed notes about seasonal variations, alternative routes for different weather conditions, and the sort of insider knowledge that comes from years of making the same journey under different circumstances. The younger dolphins treat migration like a grand adventure, approaching each day's travel with enthusiasm and curiosity about what they might encounter ahead. Their excitement about the journey provides entertainment and energy for the group, while reminding you of your own early migration experiences when everything was new and potentially exciting rather than familiar and predictable. You've reached the age where you mostly look forward to arriving somewhere and not having to swim for a while, though you've learned to hide this perspective from younger travelers who interpret migration complaints as evidence of advancing age and declining enthusiasm for life's adventures. Your travel philosophy now emphasizes efficiency and comfort over exploration and discovery. The social dynamics of group travel have evolved as your role in the pod has shifted from follower to experienced guide, whose knowledge of route conditions and timing contributes to collective travel planning. Your input on migration decisions carries weight based on your accumulated experience with different weather patterns, seasonal variations, and the sort of practical considerations that affect group travel success. Your migration responsibilities now include serving as a backup navigator for situations when primary route finders encounter problems or uncertainty about optimal path choices. This role requires maintaining detailed mental maps of alternative routes, emergency feeding areas, and the sort of contingency planning that becomes important during challenging travel conditions. The physical demands of migration have become more manageable as your swimming efficiency has improved, and your knowledge of current patterns allows you to minimize energy expenditure through intelligent route choices. Your travel technique emphasizes sustainable pacing and strategic use of favorable currents rather than impressive speed or endurance displays. Migration experiences have taught you to appreciate the subtle pleasures of long-distance travel, the meditative aspects of steady swimming, the changing water conditions that mark progress along familiar routes, and the social bonding that occurs during shared challenges and discoveries. These aspects of migration provide satisfaction that compensates for the physical demands and time requirements. Your travel stories from previous migrations become valuable educational resources for younger dolphins who are experiencing long-distance travel for the first time. Your narratives focus on practical lessons about pacing, navigation, and group cooperation, rather than dramatic adventure tales, though you occasionally include amusing anecdotes about past travel mishaps for entertainment value. The seasonal rhythm of migration provides structure to your annual cycle, creating anticipation for familiar experiences while offering opportunities to observe environmental changes along established routes. Your long-term perspective on migration allows you to notice gradual changes in ocean conditions, fish populations, and travel patterns that reflect larger environmental trends. Your approach to migration planning now involves balancing efficiency with social considerations, accounting for the needs of different pod members while maintaining reasonable travel schedules and safety margins. This planning requires diplomatic skills and practical knowledge that make you valuable to group decision-making processes. The migration experience has become one of your favorite aspects of annual life cycles, providing opportunities for extended social interaction, shared challenges, and the sort of group activities that strengthen pod relationships while accomplishing necessary seasonal relocations. Your enthusiasm for migration reflects appreciation for both the journey and the destinations, rather than simple wanderlust or adventure seeking. Your interactions with other marine life have settled into predictable patterns that reflect years of experience with the complex social hierarchy of ocean communities and the sort of diplomatic protocols that prevent minor disagreements from escalating into serious conflicts that drain everyone's energy and accomplish nothing productive. Sharks get a respectful wide berth. Sea turtles get polite greetings that acknowledge their status as elder travelers, and fishing boats get cautious curiosity from a safe distance that allows observation without involvement. You've learned which battles are worth fighting, protecting territory from aggressive fish who don't respect established boundaries, and which are better avoided, anything involving creatures larger than you, are territorial disputes with established predators, and conflicts that would require more energy to resolve than the stakes justify. This diplomatic wisdom comes from years of experience with various types of conflicts and their typical outcomes. A memorable encounter with a humpback whale teaches you about the importance of size-appropriate confidence and the value of recognizing when your territorial posturing is more amusing than intimidating to the other party. The whale's casual dismissal of your aggressive displays provides valuable perspective on your place in the ocean's hierarchy and the importance of choosing your confrontations wisely based on realistic assessments of relative capabilities. The humpback encounter occurs when you discover the whale resting in what you consider your extended territorial waters, leading to an initial response that involves the sort of aggressive posturing you would use with another dolphin who was testing your boundaries. Your threat displays rapid swimming, aggressive clicking, and territorial positioning receive the sort of polite attention usually reserved for amusing children or mildly entertaining street performers. The whale's response to your territorial claims involves what can only be described as bemused tolerance, like an adult acknowledging a small child's attempt to be intimidating while maintaining sufficient kindness to avoid damaging the child's self-esteem. The whale's massive size makes your aggressive displays look comically ineffective, providing a lesson in relative perspective that adjusts your future approach to diplomatic situations. Your diplomatic philosophy evolves to emphasize negotiation and practical problem-solving over confrontation and territorial dominance, an approach that proves more effective for resolving disputes while conserving energy for more important activities. This shift in strategy reflects growing wisdom about the limitations of aggressive approaches and the value of cooperative solutions to common problems. You develop a reputation as a diplomatic dolphin who can negotiate disputes between different species, mainly because your approach involves listening to complaints and suggesting everyone go find something to eat, instead of arguing about territorial boundaries or resource access rights. This conflict resolution technique proves surprisingly effective for diffusing tensions and redirecting energy toward productive activities. The pod has come to rely on your steady presence and practical advice during both routine decisions and emergency situations. Your input on community matters carries weight not because of your exceptional abilities, but because of your consistent track record of providing useful guidance based on careful observation and accumulated experience. You're not the fastest swimmer or the most skilled hunter, but you're dependable, which turns out to be more valuable than you'd expected when you were younger and more concerned with being impressive than being helpful. Your reputation for reliability extends to your role in maintaining pod social cohesion through consistent participation in group activities and willingness to contribute effort toward collective goals, even when you might prefer to pursue individual interests. This social commitment makes you a stabilizing influence during periods of change or stress, when community unity becomes important for group survival and success. The routines you've developed reflect efficient approaches to life management that maximize satisfaction while minimizing unnecessary effort and conflict. Your morning hunting focuses on proven techniques in familiar areas where your success rate allows you to meet your nutritional needs without extensive time investment, leaving energy available for other activities that contribute to overall life satisfaction and community responsibilities. Your afternoon social activities serve multiple purposes beyond entertainment, maintaining the relationships that provide security and support while staying informed about community developments that might affect your own planning and decision-making. These social interactions also provide opportunities to share your accumulated knowledge while learning from other pod members' experiences and perspectives. Your evening territorial patrols combine necessary security responsibilities with personal exercise and the sort of solitary time that provides opportunity for reflection and mental processing of daily experiences. These patrols have become a form of meditation that helps you maintain perspective and emotional balance while fulfilling practical obligations to territorial maintenance. The wisdom you've developed focuses on understanding long-term patterns and cycles rather than responding dramatically to short-term changes or challenges. Your perspective on community decisions emphasizes sustainable approaches that maintain stability and security over time, rather than pursuing dramatic improvements that might create unexpected problems or require unsustainable resource. Commitments. Your advice to younger pod members reflects this long-term perspective, encouraging patience and persistence in developing skills, while warning against the sort of shortcuts and dramatic gestures that seem appealing, but often create more problems than they solve. Your mentoring approach emphasizes building solid foundations rather than pursuing impressive achievements that can't be sustained over time. The satisfaction you derive from adult life comes primarily from successful management of responsibilities and relationships, rather than excitement or achievement recognition. Your happiness reflects appreciation for stability, security, and the sort of predictable success that allows you to contribute meaningfully to community life while maintaining personal autonomy and comfort. Your role in pod decision-making has evolved to focus on practical considerations and risk assessment, providing the sort of careful analysis that helps the community avoid problems and make sustainable choices about territorial management, migration planning, and resource allocation. Your contributions to these discussions emphasize realistic assessment of capabilities and limitations rather than optimistic assumptions about ideal outcomes. The peak adulthood phase of your life represents the successful achievement of sustainable competence in all major areas of dolphin existence: hunting, social relationships, territorial management, and community contribution. While this competence might not be spectacular, it provides the foundation for a satisfying life that contributes value to others while meeting your own needs for security, purpose, and social connection. Your approach to life management reflects the accumulated wisdom of someone who has learned to work effectively within their actual capabilities, rather than struggling to achieve unrealistic standards or comparing their performance to dolphins with different strengths and interests. This self-acceptance allows you to focus energy on activities where you can be genuinely effective while seeking support from others in areas where your abilities are limited. Your mediation skills become valuable to the broader community, as other marine animals begin seeking your assistance with disputes that traditional aggressive approaches haven't resolved effectively. Your reputation for fair dealing and practical solutions makes you a trusted intermediary for conflicts that require neutral perspective and creative problem-solving approaches. The diplomatic incidents you handle typically involve resource conflicts, territorial misunderstandings, and the sort of social disputes that arise when different species attempt to share limited space and resources. Your mediation approach emphasizes finding mutually beneficial solutions rather than determining winners and losers through competitive confrontation. Your success as a diplomatic mediator comes from your ability to understand different perspectives and identify practical compromises that address underlying concerns while allowing all parties to maintain dignity and achieve their essential goals. This skill develops from your own experience with finding alternative solutions when traditional approaches haven't worked effectively. The marine diplomatic community gradually recognizes your expertise in conflict resolution, leading to referrals of increasingly complex disputes that require patient negotiation and creative problem-solving. Your reputation for successful mediation creates opportunities to contribute meaningfully to community harmony while developing valuable relationships with diverse marine species. Your diplomatic encounters include regular negotiations with fishing boats whose activities affect local ecosystems and marine communities. Your approach to these interactions involves maintaining safe distances while observing human activities and adapting pod behavior to minimize conflicts while protecting community interests. The experience gained through diplomatic activities enhances your understanding of ocean politics and the complex relationships between different marine communities. This knowledge makes you valuable to your pod for strategic planning and risk assessment related to territorial decisions and seasonal migration routes. Your diplomatic philosophy emphasizes the importance of understanding other species' perspectives and motivations, rather than assuming that everyone shares similar priorities and decision-making processes. This approach proves essential for effective communication and successful conflict resolution across species boundaries. The long-term success of your diplomatic efforts contributes to your reputation as a wise and practical adult whose advice and mediation services are valued by the broader marine community. This standing enhances your pod's security and resources, while providing personal satisfaction from contributing to peaceful resolution of community conflicts. Middle age arrives without fanfare, marked mainly by the realization that you've stopped trying to impress anyone and started focusing on being consistently useful. To a transition that happens so gradually, you don't notice it until you realize that your daily priorities have shifted from seeking approval to simply doing what needs to be done efficiently and well. Your days develop a comfortable routine that reflects accumulated wisdom about how to live effectively. Morning hunting in familiar spots where your success rate is reliable. Afternoons socializing with the pod to maintain important relationships. And evening patrols of your territory to ensure everything remains secure and well managed. You've accumulated a mental database of local knowledge that makes you valuable to the community in ways that extend far beyond your individual hunting success or social achievements. Your memory banks include detailed information about which currents carry the best fish during different seasons, which areas to avoid during storm seasons when conditions become dangerous, and how to find fresh water sources during drought periods when normal supplies become unreliable or contaminated. This practical wisdom makes up for your lack of dramatic adventures or heroic achievements, providing steady value to the community through the sort of reliable expertise that prevents problems rather than solving crises after they develop. Your knowledge prevents pod members from making avoidable mistakes while helping them optimize their own activities through better understanding of local conditions and environmental patterns. The quiet competence you've achieved represents a form of success that provides lasting satisfaction and community value, demonstrating that meaningful adult life doesn't require exceptional abilities or dramatic achievements, but can be built through consistent effort, practical wisdom, and genuine commitment to contributing positively to the lives of others, while maintaining personal integrity and satisfaction. Age brings the sort of confidence that comes from having survived everything the ocean could throw at you: hurricanes that turned the seafloor upside down, food shortages that required creative foraging in previously unexplored territories, territorial disputes with aggressive neighbors, encounters with predators that tested your diplomatic skills and swimming speed, and the sort of everyday challenges that once seemed overwhelming but now feel like routine maintenance tasks for an experienced marine mammal. The realization that most problems solve themselves if you wait long enough and don't panic represents perhaps the most valuable lesson you've learned through decades of aquatic existence. This perspective comes from watching countless crises that seemed urgent at the time resolve themselves through natural processes, changed circumstances, or simply the passage of time that makes yesterday's emergency today's forgotten inconvenience. Your advice to younger dolphins has evolved from specific techniques: try approaching the fish from this angle, and click your sonar in this particular pattern, to general principles that apply broadly, across different situations and challenges. Don't chase anything that's faster than you are. When in doubt, surface for air. And most problems that seem urgent probably aren't. This shift from tactical instruction to strategic wisdom reflects your growing understanding of which lessons have universal application. The younger dolphins who seek your guidance seem initially disappointed by advice that lacks the detailed specificity they're hoping for, but gradually come to appreciate the flexibility that general principles provide for adapting to circumstances you haven't specifically encountered before. Your teaching philosophy has evolved to emphasize decision-making frameworks rather than scripted responses to predictable scenarios. You've developed the elders' prerogative of selective hearing, especially when it comes to suggestions from younger pod members about new and exciting hunting techniques that inevitably involve more energy expenditure than traditional methods, or shortcuts that invariably turn out to be longer and more dangerous than the established routes you've spent decades perfecting through careful observation and repeated travel. This selective attention strategy allows you to maintain polite engagement with enthusiastic young dolphins while protecting yourself from the sort of high-energy adventures that sound exhausting rather than exciting. Your standard response to these suggestions involves supportive noises followed by gentle redirection toward activities that don't require swimming at maximum speed through unfamiliar territory. The ocean feels smaller now, not because it's actually changed in size or scope, but because you know more of it through accumulated experience with different areas, seasonal patterns, and the sort of detailed familiarity that comes from decades of consistent observation. Familiar currents, recognized landmarks, and predictable seasonal patterns have transformed the vast unknown into a large but navigable neighborhood where you understand the local customs and know which routes lead where. Your mental map of the local ocean includes not just geographical features but temporal patterns: which areas provide the best hunting during different seasons, how weather patterns affect current flows and fish behavior, and the sort of subtle environmental cues that predict changes in conditions before they become obvious to less experienced observers. This accumulated knowledge makes navigation feel more like visiting familiar neighborhoods than exploring unknown territories. The confidence that comes with extensive local knowledge allows you to take calculated risks that would have seemed recklessly dangerous during your younger years, when every decision involved uncertainty about outcomes and consequences. Your ability to predict environmental conditions and assess risks accurately makes you valuable for group planning while allowing you to enjoy solo activities without excessive caution or anxiety. Your perspective on challenges has shifted from seeing them as tests of ability to viewing them as variations on familiar themes that require application of proven principles rather than development of entirely new solutions. This approach reduces stress while improving effectiveness, since you can focus on execution rather than figuring out what to do. The irony of becoming the sort of repetitive elder you once found tedious is not lost on you, But the importance of preserving community knowledge outweighs your self-consciousness about becoming a walking library of dolphin lore. Your role as institutional memory serves essential community functions, even if your delivery style sometimes tests the patience of your audience. Your teaching approach has developed its own pedagogical philosophy based on the understanding that young dolphins learn better through stories that provide context rather than lists of rules or abstract principles. Your instructional narratives embed practical information within memorable experiences, making the lessons easier to remember and apply in appropriate situations. The knowledge you share includes not just factual information about environmental conditions and resource locations, but also wisdom about decision-making processes, risk assessment strategies, and the sort of judgment skills that can only be developed through experience but can be accelerated through guidance from someone who has already navigated similar challenges. Your reputation as a reliable source of historical and practical information makes you valuable for community planning activities, particularly when the pod faces unusual conditions or needs to make decisions about unfamiliar situations. Your input helps the community understand how current challenges relate to past experiences and what strategies have proven effective in similar circumstances. The younger generation's adaptation to rapid environmental changes often requires integration of traditional knowledge with new approaches, creating opportunities for collaborative problem-solving that combines your historical perspective with their innovative thinking. These partnerships prove more effective than either traditional or innovative approaches used in isolation. Your role in knowledge transfer extends beyond formal instruction to include modeling of appropriate responses to various situations. Young dolphins observe your reactions to different challenges and learn from your decision-making processes even when you're not consciously providing instruction. This informal teaching happens constantly through your daily activities and interactions. The responsibility of preserving community knowledge for future generations provides a sense of purpose that extends beyond personal survival and satisfaction. Your role as cultural custodian contributes to the pod's long-term survival and success, while ensuring that valuable lessons learned through experience aren't lost when older generation members are no longer available to port to pieces. Share their wisdom. Your stories have become polished through repetition, with each telling refined to emphasize the most important lessons while removing extraneous details that don't contribute to educational value. This iterative improvement process has transformed your personal experiences into effective teaching tools that serve community educational needs. The patience required for effective knowledge transfer has developed through understanding that learning takes time and repetition, and that younger dolphins may need to hear the same lessons multiple times before they fully understand the implications and applications. Your teaching style accommodates different learning speeds and styles while maintaining persistence about important safety and survival information. The ocean has changed during your lifetime in ways both subtle and significant, transformations that become apparent only through the sort of long-term observation that comes with decades of consistent residence in the same general area. Some changes happen gradually enough that you barely notice them until you compare current conditions with memories from your youth, while others arrive suddenly and require immediate adaptation of established patterns and strategies. Shipping traffic has increased substantially since your early years, bringing more noise pollution that affects long-distance communication and echolocation effectiveness, but also providing more opportunities to observe human behavior from a safe distance and learn about the patterns of maritime commerce that influence fishing activities and seasonal migration routes. The increase in boat traffic requires constant vigilance and adaptation of travel patterns to avoid dangerous encounters. The acoustic environment of your territory has transformed as commercial shipping has intensified, with low-frequency engine noise creating background interference that makes some traditional communication techniques less effective over long distances. Your pod has adapted by developing new signaling patterns and adjusting communication protocols to account for increased ambient noise levels. The wisdom of accumulated experience manifests primarily as improved judgment about which situations require immediate attention versus which can be safely ignored or postponed. This triage ability prevents you from wasting energy on minor problems, while ensuring appropriate response to genuinely serious challenges that could affect your safety or well-being. Your understanding of ocean life cycles has developed to include long-term patterns that span multiple years, allowing you to recognize when current conditions represent temporary variations versus fundamental changes that require adaptation of established strategies. This temporal perspective provides stability during periods of uncertainty, while maintaining flexibility for genuine environmental shifts. The social wisdom you've accumulated includes understanding of pod dynamics, individual personality patterns, and the sort of relationship management skills that allow you to maintain positive connections with diverse community members while avoiding unnecessary conflicts and drama. This social competence contributes significantly to your overall life satisfaction and community standing. Your approach to problem solving now emphasizes prevention through careful planning and risk assessment, rather than reactive responses to crises after they develop. This proactive strategy reduces the frequency of serious problems while making those that do occur more manageable through advanced preparation and contingency planning. The accumulated experience of decades provides perspective on which aspects of life deserve serious concern versus which are temporary inconveniences that will resolve themselves without dramatic intervention. This discrimination ability allows you to focus energy on controllable factors while accepting the inevitable variations and uncertainties that characterize ocean existence. Your role in the pod has shifted from active participant in day-to-day activities to living repository of institutional knowledge, a transition that happened so gradually you didn't notice it until you realized that younger dolphins had begun seeking you out for information about historical fishing grounds, traditional weather patterns, and the locations of reliable food sources during lean seasons that occur with predictable frequency but unpredictable timing. The transformation from community member to community resource involves a subtle but significant change in how others interact with you. Conversations that once focused on current activities and immediate plans now center around requests for historical information, explanations of traditional practices, and the sort of background knowledge that helps younger dolphins understand why certain decisions are made and why established procedures have developed the way they have. Younger dolphins approach you with specific questions about practical matters. Where do the fish go when the water gets cold? Which currents are safe during storm season? How do you know when it's time to start migration? Your responses draw from decades of observation and experience, providing answers that combine practical information with the context necessary for understanding underlying principles. Your stories have evolved from adventure tales designed to entertain and impress to practical instruction guides filled with useful details about current patterns, seasonal fish migrations, and the sort of environmental indicators that predict changes in conditions before they become obvious to casual observation. The narrative style has shifted from dramatic storytelling to educational instruction, though you try to maintain enough entertainment value to hold your audience's attention. The younger dolphins listen with the polite attention of students who recognize they're receiving valuable information, even if the delivery style has become somewhat repetitive, and the stories tend to include more detail about water temperature variations and current patterns than they consider strictly necessary for entertainment purposes. Their patience with your instructional narratives reflects understanding that this knowledge transfer serves important community functions. You find yourself beginning sentences with phrases like, "in my experience," and "back when I was your age," which you remember finding irritating when you were on the receiving end of similar lectures from older pod members who seemed determined to share their accumulated wisdom whether or not anyone had specifically requested it. The cycle of generational wisdom transfer continues, whether anyone wants it to or not, driven by the elders' compulsion to share hard-earned knowledge before it's lost. Water temperatures fluctuate in patterns you don't recognize from your earlier years, with seasonal variations that seem more extreme and less predictable than the climate patterns you learned to navigate during your youth. These temperature changes affect fish migrations in unpredictable ways, requiring constant adjustment of hunting strategies and seasonal planning as traditional food sources appear in different locations or at different times than historical patterns would suggest. The thermal layers that once provided reliable navigation references now shift unpredictably, sometimes within the span of a few days, making temperature-based navigation less reliable than it was during your younger years when seasonal patterns followed more consistent cycles. This environmental uncertainty requires development of alternative navigation strategies and increased flexibility in travel planning. New types of fishing nets and commercial fishing techniques appear and disappear with technological advancement, requiring constant vigilance and adaptation to avoid dangerous encounters with equipment designed to capture marine life efficiently. You've learned to identify the sonar signatures of different vessel types and adjust your pod's movements accordingly, developing expertise in recognizing threat patterns before they become immediate dangers. The fishing industry's technological evolution means that traditional avoidance strategies must be constantly updated as new equipment and techniques create novel hazards that weren't present during your earlier years. Your role as community safety expert involves monitoring these technological changes and developing appropriate response protocols for new types of maritime dangers. Experience has taught you that the ocean's challenges are constantly evolving, requiring adaptability and continuous learning. But the basic principles of survival remain consistent. Maintain awareness of your environment, avoid unnecessary risks, cooperate with your community, and adapt your strategies to changing conditions while preserving core survival skills and social relationships. The younger dolphins in your pod adapt to these environmental changes with the flexibility of youth, embracing new technologies and changing conditions as normal aspects of ocean life rather than departures from established patterns. Their adaptability provides valuable community resources for dealing with novel challenges, while your historical perspective helps identify which changes represent temporary variations versus fundamental shifts requiring long-term adaptation. Both generational approaches, your experience-based caution and the younger dolphin's innovative flexibility, have their place in the pod's survival strategy. The combination of historical wisdom and adaptive innovation provides the community with comprehensive tools for navigating an environment that combines familiar patterns with unprecedented challenges. Your role in helping the community adapt to changing conditions involves providing historical context for current challenges while remaining open to new approaches that might prove more effective than traditional methods. This balance between preserving valuable knowledge and embracing necessary innovation requires ongoing judgment about which aspects of change represent opportunities versus threats. The environmental monitoring you conduct as part of your daily routine has become more important as conditions become less predictable, providing early warning about changes that might affect pod safety or resource availability. Your observations contribute to community decision-making about territorial management, migration timing, and risk assessment for group activities. The long-term perspective you've developed through decades of observation allows you to distinguish between temporary environmental fluctuations and fundamental changes that require permanent adaptation of community strategies. This temporal discrimination helps the pod avoid overreacting to short-term variations while ensuring appropriate response to genuine environmental shifts. Your experience with previous environmental changes provides valuable guidance for developing adaptation strategies that balance innovation with proven survival principles. The lessons learned from past adaptations help the community navigate current challenges while preparing for future changes that are likely to continue the pattern of environmental evolution you've observed throughout your lifetime. Your swimming has slowed to a pace that younger dolphins politely accommodate during group travel, though they sometimes swim in patient circles while waiting for you to catch up during longer journeys. You spend more time in shallow, warm waters where the current does most of the work and the fish are less challenging to catch, areas that provide comfortable environments for the sort of low-energy activities that have become your preferred lifestyle approach. This shift toward easier conditions isn't retreat from life's challenges, it's efficiency optimization based on decades of experience with what works well and what requires more energy than the results justify. Your choice to focus on comfortable environments reflects wisdom about sustainable living rather than declining capabilities, though the practical effect is the same regardless of the underlying motivation. Solo excursions become more frequent and more contemplative as you discover the pleasures of exploring familiar areas at your own pace, without the social obligations and time pressures that characterize group activities. These independent journeys allow you to revisit favorite spots and discover details you'd missed during busier years when practical concerns took precedence over leisurely observation and aesthetic appreciation. The reef formations you've known for decades reveal new aspects when observed without the pressure of hunting or navigation requirements, like noticing the intricate patterns of coral growth or the subtle color variations that change with different lighting conditions throughout the day. These discoveries provide entertainment and satisfaction that don't require physical exertion or competitive achievement. Your territory has evolved to emphasize quality over quantity, with boundaries refined to include only the most productive and comfortable areas while letting go of marginal spaces that required more energy to defend than they provided in resources or strategic advantage. This territorial optimization represents a practical approach to aging that prioritizes sustainability over ambition, focusing resources on areas where you can maintain effective control and enjoyment. The process of territorial refinement involves careful evaluation of which areas contribute meaningfully to your quality of life versus which represent unnecessary complications or maintenance burdens. Your current territory includes your favorite resting spots, most reliable fishing areas, and the scenic locations that provide aesthetic pleasure during contemplative moments. The pod still seeks your input on important decisions, recognizing that your accumulated experience provides valuable perspective on complex community challenges, but your advice has become more philosophical and less tactical. Young dolphins come to you with specific problems and leave with general principles that allow them to develop their own solutions rather than following detailed instructions for particular situations. This evolution in your advisory role reflects understanding that wisdom involves teaching decision-making processes rather than providing specific answers to individual problems. Your guidance helps younger dolphins develop judgment skills and analytical approaches that will serve them across multiple situations rather than just addressing immediate concerns. You've achieved what could generously be called wisdom, and less generously called strong opinions based on extensive experience, though the practical effect is the same regardless of terminology. Either way, this accumulated knowledge serves the community well while providing you with a sense of continued purpose and relevance that doesn't require the physical exertion or competitive achievements that characterized your younger years. Your days now follow patterns you've chosen rather than patterns imposed by necessity, schedules built around preference and comfort rather than external obligations or survival requirements. Morning hunting in proven spots where success is reliable, afternoon rest in comfortable currents that provide relaxation without effort, evening observation of the changing sea that offers entertainment and aesthetic pleasure. This routine represents the culmination of decades of trial and error, refined through experience to maximize comfort and satisfaction while minimizing unnecessary effort and stress. Your daily patterns reflect accumulated wisdom about what contributes to contentment and what represents energy expenditure without corresponding benefit. The younger dolphins seem to view you as a reliable constant in their changing world, the dolphin who's always been there and presumably always will be, a source of stability and continuity that provides reassurance during uncertain times. This reputation for permanence amuses you, given how uncertain and chaotic your early years felt when every day brought new challenges and your own survival seemed questionable. Perspective, you've learned, is mostly a matter of time and distance. The anxieties and uncertainties that once dominated your daily experience have been replaced by confidence based on accumulated evidence that you can handle whatever challenges arise. The transformation from worried youth to confident elder happened so gradually that you barely noticed it until you realized that younger dolphins now seek the sort of reassurance and guidance that you once needed from older community members. Your current life represents the successful completion of the dolphin equivalent of a career, though your profession has been simply existing well while contributing meaningfully to community life. The satisfaction you derive from this achievement comes not from dramatic accomplishments, but from the sustained effort of living thoughtfully and maintaining positive relationships over the course of decades. The peaceful solitude you've achieved provides opportunity for reflection on the journey from confused youth to experienced elder, a transformation that feels both inevitable and surprising. Your life has been thoroughly ordinary by dolphin standards, no heroic adventures or exceptional achievements, yet it has been fulfilling in ways that you couldn't have predicted during your early years of struggle and uncertainty. The final reflection that emerges from this contemplative phase is appreciation for the simple fact of having survived long enough to gain perspective on your own existence. The boring life of a dolphin, it turns out, can be quite satisfying when approached with patience, realistic expectations, and genuine appreciation for the ordinary pleasures of warm water, reliable food sources, and comfortable social relationships. Your final act as an active member of the pod involves one last teaching moment that perfectly encapsulates your entire philosophy of ocean living, a philosophy that could be summarized as persistence over perfection, with commentary. The moment arrives when a young dolphin named Echo approaches with a complex question about navigation in deep water during storms, the sort of challenging scenario that requires both technical knowledge and the kind of practical wisdom that can only come from years of making mistakes and learning from them. Echo's question is specific and urgent. How do you maintain direction when the currents are chaotic and echolocation becomes unreliable due to storm interference? It's exactly the kind of practical problem that you've encountered multiple times throughout your life. And your response naturally involves a demonstration rather than theoretical explanation, because you've learned that young dolphins understand concepts better when they can observe them in action rather than simply hearing about them. Your response involves what you intend to be a careful, practical demonstration of adaptive navigation techniques, showing how to use multiple sensory inputs when primary navigation methods become unreliable. The demonstration begins well, with you explaining the importance of feeling water pressure changes and monitoring subtle current variations that indicate directional flow, even when visibility and acoustic conditions are compromised. However, the practical demonstration goes slightly awry when you miscalculate the strength of a thermal current and end up performing an entirely unintentional barrel roll that sends you tumbling through the water in a spectacular display of aquatic confusion. The maneuver is completely accidental and thoroughly undignified, but it somehow perfectly illustrates your point about staying flexible when conditions change and adapting quickly to unexpected circumstances. The young dolphins watching the demonstration are initially concerned about your safety, but you recover quickly and use the mishap as a teaching opportunity, explaining that even experienced navigators sometimes encounter surprises and that the key to survival is maintaining composure and adapting to whatever actually happens, rather than insisting on what you thought was going to happen. And that, you conclude with characteristic dry humor, is why flexibility is more important than precision in storm navigation. The incident immediately becomes pod legend, which seems entirely appropriate given your lifelong tendency to provide memorable examples of how not to do things while somehow achieving successful outcomes anyway. Your contribution to dolphin culture will be remembered as a unique combination of practical wisdom and accidental comedy, delivered with the sort of wry commentary that made even routine hunting expeditions entertaining for anyone lucky enough to swim alongside you. The story of your inadvertent barrel roll demonstration gets retold and embellished with each sharing, becoming a perfect encapsulation of your teaching philosophy. That competence doesn't require perfection, that mistakes can be instructional, and that maintaining a sense of humor about your own limitations is often more valuable than achieving technical excellence. The tale spreads throughout the pod network, ensuring that your approach to life and learning will influence dolphins you've never met. You settle into semi-retirement in a shallow lagoon where the water maintains perfect temperature year-round. The fish populations are abundant and relatively easy to catch, and the gentle current does most of the swimming for you. This location represents the culmination of decades of environmental knowledge, chosen specifically for its combination of comfort, convenience, and the sort of low-maintenance lifestyle that suits your current priorities and energy levels. The lagoon becomes an informal gathering place for younger dolphins who visit regularly, ostensibly seeking advice about practical matters but mostly coming for the stories, which have been polished by repetition into perfect examples of how to survive in the ocean while maintaining perspective and humor about the whole enterprise. Your narratives have evolved into a distinctive form of oral tradition that combines practical instruction with entertainment. Your storytelling sessions follow a comfortable routine. Morning visitors seeking advice about immediate problems, afternoon social gatherings where stories emerge naturally from conversation, and evening solitary reflection where you practice new versions of familiar tales. Each telling refines the balance between educational content and entertainment value, creating stories that serve multiple functions for community culture. The younger dolphins have learned to time their visits to coincide with your most alert and sociable periods, creating an informal schedule that provides social interaction when you want it and solitude when you prefer contemplation. This arrangement suits everyone involved, giving you purpose and company while providing the younger generation with access to accumulated wisdom and entertaining perspectives on common challenges. Your legacy, you realize, isn't built on heroic adventures or dramatic rescues. It's the accumulated wisdom of someone who figured out how to live a thoroughly ordinary life extraordinarily well. You mastered the art of being consistently present during important moments, reasonably helpful when assistance was needed, and occasionally amusing when situations called for levity, which turns out to be more valuable than you'd expected when you first tumbled into consciousness all those years ago. The skills that define your legacy are precisely the ones you stumbled into accidentally. Persistence in the face of repeated failure, adaptability when circumstances changed unexpectedly, and the ability to find humor in situations that might otherwise seem frustrating or discouraging. These characteristics, which emerged from necessity rather than planning, have proven more useful for community life than any exceptional talents could have been. Your approach to mentorship reflects this same philosophy, emphasizing practical resilience over theoretical perfection and encouraging younger dolphins to develop their own solutions rather than copying predetermined techniques. The wisdom you share focuses on general principles that can be adapted to individual circumstances rather than specific instructions that might not work for dolphins with different capabilities or interests. The ocean continues around you, vast and blue-green and surprisingly wet, exactly as it was when you first arrived decades ago with no idea what you were doing or how anything worked. The fundamental nature of your environment hasn't changed, even though your understanding of it has deepened beyond anything you could have imagined during those early days of confusion and uncertainty. The fish still move in silver, schools that catch the filtered sunlight like living constellations. The currents still carry you where you need to go with the same reliable power that once seemed so mysterious. And somewhere in the distance, a new generation of dolphins is learning to swim with the sort of confident clumsiness you remember from your own youth, making the same mistakes and discovering the same solutions that have characterized dolphin life for countless generations. You float peacefully in the warm shallows, listening to the familiar sounds of pod life, the distant clicks of hunting expeditions, the social chatter of grooming sessions, the playful splashing of young dolphins, practicing new skills, and occasionally offering commentary that nobody specifically requested, but everyone seems to appreciate. It's exactly the sort of boring, comfortable, thoroughly satisfying existence you'd accidentally stumbled toward from the very beginning, though it took decades to recognize it as the destination you'd been seeking. The water tastes like salt and seaweed smoothie, which you've decided is actually quite pleasant once you develop the palate to appreciate its subtle complexity. Some things, you've learned through extensive experience, just take time to appreciate properly, and the ordinary pleasures of ocean life reveal their true value only to those patient enough to pay attention over the course of many years. Your final reflection, as you rest in the gentle current of your chosen lagoon, is one of quiet satisfaction with a life well lived according to your own modest standards. You never became the fastest swimmer, the most skilled hunter, or the most impressive dolphin in the pod, but you became something perhaps more valuable, a reliable presence who contributed consistently to community life while maintaining humor and perspective about the beautiful absurdity of conscious existence in an ocean that remains vast, mysterious, and surprisingly accommodating to those willing to work with its patterns rather than against them.